Hello. Am I audible? Yeah. Hi, everyone. It's my first time in Europe, and I'm having amazing time in Europe. I've come in the spring season, so maybe witnessing tulip would be my luck. Starting off to introducing myself, who am I? Basically, I'm not just a senior software engineer. I like to introduce myself as a learner because I like to learn a lot of things from culture, diversity, people all around the globe. So I am a learner. That's what I describe myself as. Apart from that, I'm a community enthusiast, and I'm an AWS community builder. I started my journey in OpenSearch via AWS Community Builder. I'm a senior software engineer in Cohesity. That has nothing to do with what OpenSearch does. But for my personal interest, I am a community builder, so that's how I contribute to OpenSearch. And apart from that, I'm an innovator. I have participated in many hackathons all across India, as well as from Singapore and Africa. I have been a winner plus now an evaluator for many hackathons. And I like to express my thoughts just like I'm doing right now. So I'm a great public speaker, maybe great, an amazing person. And I'm an athlete by heart. So I like to enjoy myself soaking in nature. Just like you can see this one here, I went to this Pulpit Rock hike in Norway just before I came here. So it was amazing. I had really amazing time there. And I run various communities in and across Pune. So we have free and open source software, FOSS India, the FOSS United, that we run in Pune. We have GDG, we have AWS Community Builder, we have MongoDB, Mug user groups, and there are many such stuff. So that's how I like to introduce myself. So yeah, that's about me. So today's agenda is yours truly. That's done. And why are we choosing this topic today? Why security and in OpenSearch? And I would like to take it one step closer to what we do and how we are going to go to dynamic credentials. Overview of what dynamic credentials are, how can I use dynamic credentials with OpenSearch. There will be a demo time, so I hope that it should work. I have a pre-recording, though. And I will talk on more use cases where can you leverage SAS tokens, that is dynamic authentication in OpenSearch, and then some few resources, and I'll be open to the Q&A. That's how the agenda looks like. So let's understand why security is important in OpenSearch these days. As you would be aware that many of the companies and enterprises are involved into compliance and license issues, right? So data sovereignty has been a great struggle for many such companies. So we should always look into increasing compliance pressures from the higher authorities and the local laws, right? So it's a high time that we switch our gears to more better secure ways of authenticating right at the first layer, right? First layer as in authentication. And many such environments are being used in, like, let's consider OpenSearch, right? It's not just only on-prem or on cloud. It has various different multi-tenants architecture, right? So to deal with multi-tenants architecture, unauthorized access is not what we want, right? So that's how, to deal with different tenants, we need to be aware of what security measures we need to take to handle that. And cloud-native deployments have been taking all over the globe. So it was not a thing a few years ago, but now cloud-native environments, be it Azure, GCP, Oracle, MongoDB, everything is being taken into cloud-native architectures, right? And it's really hard to scale that much to cloud, right? So to deal with such kind of credentials, we need to switch to our dynamic credentials, and that's why is very much important. I like to keep it why rather than how. So you should understand why are we doing it rather than how should we do it. So that's about why are we doing it. Coming to what dynamic credentials are and how are they different from static credentials. So static credentials are something that, let's consider all of you maybe having using AWS, right? Just an S3, right? How do you access S3? You just create a access key token, right? Access key and secret key, and you just feed it into your CLI, and that's how you access the S3, right? You get the objects. That is the static kind of credentials that are there. And these kind of credentials look something like this, right? Right? So these credentials, what are the problems with these kind of credentials? Firstly, they are very long-lived, right? You need to go and rotate them if they are compromised, right? They are long-lived, they are predefined, the roles, the permissions are all predefined. Just consider a scenario where you land up being exposing this to a malware, right? And you have to rotate it every now and then. Isn't that a big headache, right? So these are very long-lived and predefined, and if you want to change it, you have to have the explicit admin or authorized user access to change them. And these kind of credentials are API keys, database passwords, encryption keys, all kinds of these keys are static credentials. And that's not I recommend, and I'll move towards what dynamic credentials are. As you can see, there's these keys, right? But they have a clock in there. The clock is expiration time. That's what you have to define by yourself. How long do you want these credentials to be active for, right? So that is having short lifespan. You define for how long you want it to be active, and plus you get it on demand. They are generated on demand, on fly. They get expired once it is once per use. You can set it as per usage or as per time period, right? You can set it, I want it once per use, so just like your credit card OTPs, right? Once per use, or it could be time-based revocation. So these are kind of the dynamic credentials that we leverage today in OpenSearch. These are the static credentials that you usually use. And that's not what we should be using. We should be saying no to static credentials because they are long-lived. They give attackers, the malware, the ransom attackers, long-lived time, and a risk window is quite long, right? Until and unless you detect that there is a malware, it is compromised already, right? And it's not really as happy as this person sounds here, right? Rotating credentials and then redistributing it to your customer, and then again, your DevOps would be really, really unhappy with the extra pain that you're adding up to their load, right? So that's saying no to static credentials at all. Why dynamic credentials? I would like to take it one step closer to enhancing securities. So dynamic credentials are limited time span. You have everything in time. You can specify how long do you want it. You can have short time span. You have to re-authenticate every now and then. So once it expires, it tells you to re-authenticate again. That's how security should work like, right? And after it's being used, it is never gonna have a longer risk window, right? It's gonna be minimizing your risk window so that it's never compromised with the ransomware attacks. And obviously, I love this least privilege principle that AWS has. You give access to what bare minimum is needed, right? You don't give access to what is wanted rather than needed, right? That's the difference in giving least privilege. And these permissions that you give for that token, if you change the permissions, the token that was generated will also reflect the changes. That's so amazing, right? That's how it works. So it will change according to the permissions that you are changing. So these are kind of the advantages of using dynamic credentials. And there's something look like this. It's too much, but I'll walk you through what it is. So these are the kind of session tokens right from year till year. And you can see it has an expiration. It will expire at this point of time. And all of this, I'll walk you through how it is generated. That's how it looks like. I hope I have convinced you enough to use dynamic credentials. So I would like to take it how I'm going to use dynamic credentials in OpenSearch now. So in OpenSearch, there are two ways that we can leverage dynamic credentials. Firstly, there is on behalf of someone. That is on behalf tokens, and there is service account tokens. So there are two ways, and for now, today, for the demo, we are going to use the first one that is on behalf of tokens, and I'll walk you through how you can also leverage use of service account tokens. So on behalf tokens are something that on behalf of an IMA user, there's an IMA user, right? On behalf of that IMA user, you're creating a token, and once that token is generated, you are leveraging the IMA user's permissions already. So it is like an IMA user is there, and whatever permissions the IMA user has, you create the tokens for that itself. So it is gonna inherit the user privileges for the short duration, whatever duration you're gonna specify. And if you don't specify, there is a default of an R. And these are kind of JWTs, simply speaking, because you have time-bound access. And these validity, you need to specify, or by default, it's an R. And the usage is just in time. That's the perfect way of how security should work like. It is issued immediately right after you have hit the API. So once it is immediately issued, it gets expired after the time period that you have specified, right? So it's just in time. And you can configure it through the configure.yaml in the OpenSearch. I'll walk you through that as well. So that's how OBO works. So OBO on behalf of, that simply explains what it does, right? On behalf of some user, you are taking those privileges and the permissions, and you're using that up. This is something which is very much the need of the hour, because here, if you could understand, there is an IMA user, right? From the IMA user, you're taking everything up. But let's consider there is no user, right? I don't want to create a user. Then what should I do to use the tokens? Then you create a service account. A service account is without assuming a role of an active user. You don't need to be an active user. For this, you need to be an active user and leverage the permissions of the user. If you don't want to create a user, if you don't want that additional cost to be there, then you have to take part into service account. Service account is you are allowing extensions to perform some operations. You are giving some permissions to those kind of service accounts. You are not creating any user here. This is a little different than what IMA user is. I'll walk you through that as well. And this is obviously configurable as per how you want, 1 hour, 2 hours, 30 minutes, 90 minutes. You can set it to whatever time validity you want, and it will expire just in time like that. And it is designed majorly for system-level operations, because system-level operations do not need an active user, right? If you don't need an active user, then you can use service accounts. Are you excited? Because wish me luck. I mean, I don't know whether it will work or not. I have a pre-recording session, but still, I mean, yeah, wish me luck. That's what happens most of the times. I'll just walk you through what the demo will cover before we go into the demo, so that it will better familiarize you with what I'll be doing. Firstly, I'm going to create an OpenSearch domain simply in the AWS. I'm creating an OpenSearch domain with an IMA as the master user. I'm not creating a master username or password. I'll just create an OpenSearch normal thing, by default keeping everything to default. And once I've created that, I'll create an IMA user. So as you can see, I'm using an IMA user. So this is the kind of OBO, that is on behalf of an user, I'm going to create temporary credentials. So the IMA user that I'm going to create is named as demo user 1. And there will be a policy which will be attached to this user, namely as demo policy. And there will be, so I'll attach this policy to the user, and there will be a role. This role plays a very important role here, because I have attached many permissions to this role so that it can leverage the use of the IMA user here. So as you can see, there are 2 permissions that I'll add on. One is the give full access. For now, for the demo, you can, you can configure it as per your usage, like limited access, read, write. But for now, I'm giving all full access to this OpenSearch service for this role, and that's AWS managed role, right? And I'm also creating this policy that I created. I'm giving access to this policy as well to this role. I'll walk you through this. Bear with me a little. And I'll attaching this role to the user. So there's a trust kind of relationship that I'm developing that allow this user to use the role and access the OpenSearch service. So this is what I'm going to do. Let's understand what, if I was not using dynamic credentials, how would it really work? If it was static credentials, just like access key and secret key. So if I'm a user, I would have a long-term security credentials, right? Like access keys and secret keys, which has no expiration at all. It has no clock here, right? It is just normal thing. And I would just use assume role. I would just use it with long-term credentials, and my security is compromised at a high risk, right? What if a malware comes in? What if many unrestricted access are given? Privileges are not what I wanted, right? So this is what the traditional thing looks like. But now I'm going to use an IMA user. I'm attaching a policy to it, I'm creating a temporary credentials here, right? So there are two kinds of checks which would happen. First check is, does this IMA user have the permission enough to access the bucket or open source service here? Does this have the permission? Secondly, I'm checking whether the role that I've attached to it, does this role have enough permissions to trust the relationship between the user and the role? So there are two kinds of checks as well that are involved here. And once these checks are completed, I get a STS token, which is time-bound. The time that you have specified. If you're not specified any time, it would be 1 hour. So I am creating a temporary credentials, and through this temporary credentials, I can access any AWS services, be it OpenSearch, be it S3, any kind of thing, right? So I am going to use this kind of scenario in my OpenSearch. So this is what we're going to do today. I have an IMA user name as demo user 1. This is an OBO model, right? And once this user is created, I have a role, which is giving temporary access to this role. And I'm assuming a role. So this is the permission that I'm giving. And the service that I'm accessing is OpenSearch. This is the OBO model that I'm using. And once the OBO model is configured right enough, I will just hit the AWS CLI, and I will just assume the role. I'll give my account number. This is my account number, not the bank account number. And I have an OpenSearch demo role that I've created. And I'm going to specify, do you see this? I've specified 900 seconds. How much minutes is that? By 69. 15 minutes, right? So I'm going to hit this, and I'll get a response, something like, OK, I have it attached. So something, I'll get a response. And once that response is there, I'm going to use a Postman and hit the OpenSearch dashboard. And let's see whether these credentials work or not. And once, after 15 minutes, I hope I have enough time for 15 minutes frame. If I have 15 minutes, once that expires, you will see that I no longer get access to OpenSearch dashboard. So I'll just demo you this part. Cool. This is the OpenSearch. So demo OpenSearch SAS token is what I've created the domain name in AWS. And you can see this URL, right? And I've created it with a master user type IMA. That is the OBO model. And once this is created, I will just go to creating. So I'm just walking you through what I have done here. So we are here for now. I created the OpenSearch domain, right? That's what I showed you now. Now I'm creating an IMA user, OpenSearch demo user 1. So I have this part here. This is an IMA user. I have attached two policies to it, right? First is what I have attached is a demo policy. You can see it allows access to ES. What is ES? It's an OpenSearch service in AWS. And the resource that I'm giving access to is my account number, the region, US East 1. And this is the OpenSearch domain that I just have shown you, right? So I'm giving access to this user to use the OpenSearch service. And this is a custom managed policy. So I've created the policy name OpenSearch demo policy. So we have created step number 3 as well, right? I've created the policy, I've created the user. I've attached the policy to the user, and once the policy is attached, I'm also giving access to the role. So let me walk you through what roles have I created here. Yeah. So OpenSearch demo role is one of the roles that I've created here. And you can see I have built a trust relationship here, which will allow the role with the account to assume a role that is attached with the user. So the user that I've created was OpenSearch demo user 1, right? So I'm allowing a trusted relationship between a user and a role to access the OpenSearch service. So yeah, we are done with IMA role as well. And I've attached these permissions. I've given these permissions. So let me walk you through the permissions. Yeah. Loading. Yeah. There is one already given AWS managed one, which is giving full access to OpenSearch service. And there is other policy that I created was giving explicit access to my domain, that is OpenSearch STS tokens, right? So that's what I had created, and I'm giving explicit access to this kind of service here. So I have also created the trusted relationship, and I've created the permissions and attached the permissions to the role. I hope these steps are pretty much clear. Now, let me walk you through. So I hope this is clear, and let me walk you through just hitting the CLI and getting the temporary credentials. So this is the CLI. That was the previous session that I had. I hope it's visible. Little? Good enough? OK. So right now, the time that I see is 1st May, 10 a.m. UTC times. OK. And now if I hit the, so right now, I have a profile that I've created. This is the OpenSearch demo user one that I've created a profile, and I'm logging through this profile. I have the user ID, the account name, and the ARN. So the ARN is actually taken from the IMA role, right? This role that this user that I have, I'm using this user itself to log into my Cloud Shell, right? And this is what I'm going to use. The profile name is demo search demo user one. And let us hit the API. So I am giving time as 90, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. Okay. Do you see the duration here? It's 900 seconds. That is almost 15 minutes. So, and I'm using the profile name, the one that I created, which was user one. So I'm not logged in as a root user. Mind that. I'm logged in as a IMA user that I have attached. So this is an on behalf of IMA user, I'm creating a temporary credentials. And the temporary credentials look something like this. So this is the access key, secret key, the session token. And these are different from what access keys and secret keys we see in the static ones, right, for the bucket. And this is the expiration. You can see it's 10:22, and now it was 10:06. So it's almost 15 minutes from now. So I'm going to copy paste these credentials into Postman and see whether it's working or not. So this is my access key ID. I have Postman here. Is it visible? Little bigger. Better?
A little more for the people in the back.
Yeah. OK, got really big. Yeah, I have pasted the access keys. I am now pasting the secret access key that was created by my CLI using the role that was used. And the URL, you can see, it is taken directly from the OpenSearch service that I have. So this URL is exactly being used as it is. And the region that I have hosted the OpenSearch is US East 1. And the service name is ES, that is OpenSearch service. And the token that I'll be using, I'm going to replace it with the token that got generated here. Yeah, still equal, yeah. My demo worked, and I'm happy. So this is what I get an output. As you can see, this is just logging into the dashboard of OpenSearch. And this is the OpenSearch indexes. So the index health, it shows it's all green. And the index names are these of the indexes that were there in my OpenSearch service. This is the UUID, that unique identifier that identifies. And there are there are shards inside that indexes. So how many shards are there, how many documents are there inside that index, and all kinds of information, and the size of the primary shard, the replica, everything, right? So this is just one kind of use case that I have used here to just hit the dashboard, log in through my STS, right? After 15 minutes, I'll walk you through some use cases. How can I use these credentials and leverage temporary access? After 15 minutes, I hope I have 15 minutes, we're going to come back again and just hit the send here, and we're going to see whether I really have the access yet or not, right? I'm not touching it at all. Let me just come back to the PPT here. Yep. So that's how I created the temporary credentials, and I used it in the Postman, right? So this is what I get right now. And after 15 minutes, we're going to wait for 15 minutes, and it will just say like this. Are you able to see? The security token included in the request is expired, just like how you use your credit cards, right? So it's similar to this. Let me walk you through a few of the use cases. The demo that I showed you just has login to OpenSearch dashboard, right? But some of the use cases that are very much important in today's world is having temporary access, right? So let's consider a scenario. A user logs into a web application, right? But that user is not working in your company, right? So you want that user to just go into OpenSearch and just get the metrics, get the logs, get the alerts to pull out or to put the Excel into it, right? So you just want temporary access to be given to a particular user. Let's consider you want it for 30 minutes. Let's consider you want for 15 minutes, right? So you would just create a temporary IMA user, and you would just create that duration as 30 minutes, 60 minutes, or 900 seconds, just like what I did, right? And these temporary credentials would be used by the user only till 30 minutes, right? And that's a secure part, right? After 30 minutes, the tokens will no longer be valid for that user. I'll walk you through how this will say that it's not valid anymore. So it's a security that is being used here, and the Postman, you can use Postman, you can use SDKs, you can use all kinds of things, and you can leverage the use of STS here. And this adds up to, it's ideal for dashboards, it's ideal thing for Grafana kinds of things, right? Where you want analytics part of it, but only for a specified duration. So this is what one of the use cases that we use. So this is an identity provider. It has a user agent or many users. It just requests one, and it gets a response. It has an IMA STS that is created. So just like what we created one with the temporary access, you get to assume a role. You make an API call to the OpenSearch. It validates whether this IMA STS is still valid or not. If it's valid, it will just give a temporary response that, yeah, it's valid. And now you can leverage the use of OpenSearch. You can do analytics. You can have dashboards, alerts, metrics, and everything just for that time period, just for 15 minutes or whatever time duration you have specified. So this is one kind of temporary access use case that is used a lot in these kind of scenarios. Another kind of use cases which are very much important when it comes to temporary access is ETLs, that is inject, transform, load kind of things, where you want to just ingest some job based on some kinds of alerts. So let's consider you have a job that, let's consider you have a Lambda function here, right? It just needs to put out some logs into OpenSearch, and it is event-based triggering, right? So you just want it to work for every 1 hour you want it to work, right? So it will just work for 1 hour each night, and it will assume a role, and it will push logs and metrics into OpenSearch, and after 1 hour, the token is no longer valid, right? So you just want temporary, some kind of service that gets triggered, and it's hourly basis, and you don't want permanent access to be given to that kind of services, right? So it's kind of ingest jobs which will leverage the use of STS tokens and dynamic credentials. These are very much important in ETLs, pipelines, processing jobs, just like monitoring, alerts, and everything. So I am using Cognito to access it, and then I have Lambda function, which will have, let's consider DynamoDB is one of the service that needs processing to be done, and this processing needs access to OpenSearch, but it doesn't need access all the time. It just needs access for hourly basis, or let's consider it's per night, right? So you just take the temporary credentials, you access the OpenSearch, you get all the metrics and logs that you want, and then the DynamoDB does the processing of your data, right? So this is how some applications would be using your temporary credentials. The last kind of use case, which I think is very much important, is cross-account access. So most of the applications that we currently work on have two kinds of environments, right? One is a production environment, staging environments, and there is kind of what developers work in, that is developers environment, right? So there are two kinds of environments. First is the developer account, and there are production accounts. Mostly developers do not have access to production accounts, right? And that's how, if we want to debug something in a developer in a production environment, how do we go into that production environment is through temporary access. So you give, this is cross account, right? These are two different accounts, and you want access to one of the account for only stipulated time, right? Only the time period that you want to specify as. So you will just create a temporary credentials by assuming a role. Once the role is created, and this would be temporary access to only some kind of services. Let's consider it is OpenSearch for now, right? Or it is S3 for now. So these kind of resources are limited access to one of the user in another account. And this is crossly accessing some service in another account, and it will just use the temporary credentials for some time, and once the expiration is done, it has no longer the access, right? So this kind of services are very much important when you want to do multi-account AWS organizational things, because there are various teams in actual real-world entities, right? There would be various different accounts that will be used, and for those reasons, the vendor integrations need to be done, right? And for those kind of scenarios, cross-account access plays a very important role here. And for that, you can leverage use of STS tokens. So today we only discuss on behalf of a user, right? I only walked you through I'm a user, and I created temporary credentials using an I'm a user. But let's consider there is no I'm a user. For system processing and other things, you don't need a active user to be participating in. So for those kind of scenarios, you can create something called as service accounts. And service accounts are not users at all. And I have one of the blogs that I had written for service account. Due to time constraint, I can't demo you that, but I have everything intact. You can just scan this up, and you would be able to see how I have done the coding, as well as there's a video attached to it. So you can leverage the use of service account as well. And today, what we discussed is from this document. This is an official OpenSearch document, so you can scan this up to know what on behalf credentials are and service account credentials are. I hope you caught that. Yeah. And to connect with me, I'm there on LinkedIn, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn to collaborate, to network, to learn more on anything and everything. And I'm a learner, so I'm open to anything. And I hope the credentials are no longer valid. What's the time?
You have a little more than 5 minutes. So
Close enough. What's the time now? I created the credentials at 10:06, and it's 10:18. Yeah, I know. So I'm going to hit it. I still have it valid. Just wait, hold on. Because this is getting created. It will expire in 22, and it's still just 18. I'm going to wait for 4 minutes. Until then, yeah, maybe.
if you want, you can take questions.
No, I have few slides. OK, so these are some kind of memes that I have wanted to share. So I'm really happy that I had this opportunity to be here. And thanks for being an amazing audience. That's how I want the hall to look like once I have the expired credentials. And I learned something in Dutch that is bedankt, if I'm not wrong. Bedankt. Okay. Thank you for OpenSearch for hosting me here and also having me. And it's my first time in Europe, so it's really special. And until next time, I'll see you there. So. I'm open to questions for 3 minutes, and then I'm going to go back to my demo to see whether it's expired or not.
All right, questions.
Not like a serious question.
Oh, wait.
Do any?
Yeah.
Not a serious question, but are you going to do any more traveling around Europe before you go back to India?
I'm going to come back again. I just can't get over Europe.
Hi, thank
Hello.
you for your presentation.
Thank you.
A question, do you know if it also integrates with the AWS Identity Center? Instead of
Yes,
users?
it
Yeah.
does integrate with that. I have a use case there as well. So the one that I showed has this one, the service account. It uses IDP.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
so you can read on that.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
So in the, thank you for the presentation again. For the user that you have created, why do you need the permissions on ES star while you already use STS, assume role?
So it is resource-based privileges, right? I'm giving permission to one of the service. If I want all the service, I can specify star, right? If I want only ES, that is OpenSearch for now, then I'm giving ES. So it is the principle and action that I'm going to specify for that user, right?
No, but the role user itself
Yeah.
assumes a role which already has access to
Correct.
ES
So
star,
the
right?
policy that is attached to it, to the role, right? That's what you mean, right?
No,
The
policy that is attached to the user.
Yeah, that has access to the role.
You also attach the ES star policy to the user. Do we really need that?
No, because I have a trusted relationship, right?
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
really don't need that. I'm
that's
giving
the
this
reason.
kind of thing, right? I'm giving a assume role here. This is the trusted relationship. I'm giving the user a trusted relationship with the role.
Yeah.
So I would no longer need that. Yeah.
If you could.
Yeah, I can remove that. Yeah, it will not. Yeah, you're correct.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Just curious about, I guess, if you have any tips for when you use fine-grained access control for OpenSearch, if you have used that with
Yeah.
STS and kind of try to manage access, going from just AWS-based access in terms of short-lived tokens to using fine-grained access.
Yeah. It depends on what kind of application you are working on. Not all kinds of scenarios need a long-term access, right? If you are performing some processing jobs or some kind of ETL jobs, which just need temporary access to a service, then you should leverage long-term, you should leverage static, no longer static credentials is what I mean, right? And your service, let's consider if you have a service which temporarily doesn't need, it needs a permanent access, then I would genuinely request that use static credentials, because static credentials do not add to your managing skills, right? You don't need to every now and then refresh it. That's also adding to your task, right? That's also adding to, again and again, refreshing again, hitting the API, right? So it depends on what kind of applications you are using and what kind of situation you are in there, right? So, yeah. I have the token.
I was about to say, I think your token is expired by now.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question, if anybody
Yeah.
has one. All right, another round of applause. That was
Thank you.
amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.